Mr. Lanier? Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Mr. Thomas? Mr. Cunningham?
Here.
Mr. Giuliano? And Chairman Martin?
Here. Thank you. Let's quickly take these first few things on the minutes and then get to our guests. This is supposed to be televised. I hope everybody will learn something from it. We're talking about the pollution in the lagoon and what's being done about it. We all want to become informed about that. So first of all, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last two meetings of April and June?
I'll approve.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Now, let's put citizens' input last. And let's call on Robin, if you will, please, to give us a presentation about your organization and what you're doing. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me here today. Excuse me. I'm Robin Danahauer, and I'm with the Ocean Research and Conservation Association, known as ORCA. ORCA is an organization that was founded by Dr. Edie Witter here on the Treasure Coast in 2005. And really what ORCA does, to keep it in very simple terms, is ORCA was created to develop and to use technology to monitor and ensure water quality of all sorts of aquatic preserves, including intercoastal waterways, rivers, anywhere where there's a body of water. ORCA works using its different technologies to try to monitor the water, to provide testing, and to provide analysis of problems so that they can be addressed by different communities. The biggest thing I want to talk about today is, and I gave this to you up on the panel, but I also want to make people who aren't in the room today or anyone who's here today that wants to do this, you can go onto our website. It's called teamorca.org, and you can download one of these brochures. It's called The Campaign for a Clean Indian River Lagoon. And what we've created is a plan. We see it as a 3-year plan. And what it does is it uses ORCA science, which includes mapping. And for a lot of people who don't know what ORCA does, we have two technologies that we've developed. The first one is they're called Kilroys. They look like little robots. They're about as big as a football. And they're put into the water, and they monitor a lot of different things. But they tell us about the health of the water so that we know if a problem is developing. We know when something is, whether there's one of the conditions that has gone over or under a safe range for animal or plant life. So we can monitor all those different things. So these Kilroys are an efficient way, and they're being deployed in the Indian River Lagoon, but we do need more. So we are deploying those in the lagoon as we speak. And then also the second technology that we've developed is called FAST, and it's an assessment of the sediment that's in any body of water, but in this case in the Indian River Lagoon. And again, if you look at our website and if you look at this campaign, you'll see we have an example in there of a 1-mile section that we did between the 17th Street and the Barber Bridge. And we go in and we pick about 70 sites on average. There's about 70 sites in a square mile of water. And within those 70 sites, we might take about 5 samples of sediment, and then we test them for things like phosphorus and nitrogen and toxicity. And then we create something that looks like a weather map. And I'm sorry I don't have charts here. I didn't realize we were going to be televised. But there are charts, and you can see this on our website. They look like weather maps. So people can look at these maps of the lagoon, and they can see where there's higher levels of toxins or nitrogens. And in the case of the example that's in the brochure, between the 17th Street and the Barber Bridge, between all the finger canals, they're very, very red, which means, again, with a weather map that it's hot, or if the areas where it's blue, there's not a lot of concentration of toxic materials. And the finger canals are all red because of all the overloading of people over-fertilizing their lawns. And it's not just the people that live in the canals, it's people who live inland who the yard crews come in and they blow the leaves, or they over-fertilize, and the rain washes everything into the lagoon. So using that map, about a year and a half ago, we worked with the City Council of Vero Beach. We presented that information to them, and they passed an ordinance for fertilizer in the city of Vero Beach, and I believe the county has just done so as well. So ORCA is really about using technology using science to address the problems. And I think one of the things we know is, in the south part of the lagoon right now, they're having horrible problems because of the discharges from Lake Okeechobee. In the northern part of the lagoon, we think it's fertilizer, we think it's septic tank. There are a couple of other things that are happening that have come back from our testing that we're not sure what they are, but they're none of those things. So that's why we like to use real science, because we can all sit here and guess, and there's probably not 3 or 5. There are probably maybe 20 things that are really affecting the lagoon, but we're not sure which of those things are affecting which section of it, and how much because water is always on the move, how much of that goes on to affect another area. So in our plan, it's a 3-step plan, and we're looking at doing this over a 3-year period of time, and using the science and technology we really want to do is come up with answers and provide those to the different communities, whether there's city, counties, the state governments, individuals, other groups, so that we can really come up with solutions and fix the entire lagoon. So that's what ORCA is all about today. So, questions?
Thank you. Recently, in the paper, it said something about Governor Scott had vetoed part of a budget that had to do with buying more of those monitoring devices. Is this a problem?
Well, I really don't know, because I don't know. I know about that project that was vetoed. It was another organization, and they were actually proposing to use a similar device, something similar to what we have, but their product was made in Canada. So I know that there were some people who were upset that, we developed these systems here. And I do have to say that a couple of years ago, before we had an economic crisis in the country the way we did, the state of Florida actually invested, I think, $500,000 in this technology so we could develop it. So now that we need it and it's ready to be deployed, we just feel that it probably makes sense to buy the units that are made here by the people who work here on the Treasure Coast. But that's, of course, we're biased. It's our organization. But so I do know about that, but I'm not sure. I did hear someone say that it was because they were Canadian units. But again, that's just what I've been told by several people. But we're hoping. We've met with Senator Negron. We've met with Debbie Mayfield. We've met with a lot of the local officials, Larry Lee in St. Lucie County, Todd Mowry, Tim Zork. So we're meeting with everyone, trying to inform them about what we're doing, and we're getting a lot of support for people. So, again, we're hoping that people will look to see the plan that we have in place and maybe reach out and try to support our campaign. Either there are different ways you can support it, but also by contacting your officials and letting them know that you want them to support the plan as well.
What's the optimum density that you'd like to have the Kilroy or the FAST system in place? Well,
our plan really to map the entire 156 miles of the Indian River Lagoon, because it's really, one of the things we found from the mapping that we've done is there are things that we don't know how they got there. They're not the obvious pollutants or the heavy metals or whatever. They're not the obvious things that you think would be there. So our plan is really to start at one end, or actually to start at each county and go northward until we finish each county, the 4 counties being Martin County, St. Lucie, Indian River, and Brevard County. So once we do that mapping, we would really be able to understand what laden chemicals are there, maybe from agriculture from years ago. There are things in parts of the lagoon where there's absolutely no development. So we're kind of baffled at where some of these things have come from. And also, once we identify them through the mapping and we know the worst parts of the lagoon and we know the worst chemicals or the worst pollutants, then we can come up with a plan for those areas. And some of it, nature will just take care of itself. But if we can identify the worst parts of it and come up with plans or actions, then we can really help, I think, restore the lagoon. And then we'd really like to see 50 Kilroy units from one end of the lagoon to the other. And we're starting right now. We're proposing to the state that they purchase 25 of our units to install in the canals that lead into the lagoon. I think there are 25 of them. So we're proposing that they put one in every one of the relief canals so that, even if we start seeing improvement, that water should be monitored all the time, because there's no saying that if we start seeing improvement right now, then in a year or two, something else is happening. And it's only when we see a problem that we realize something has occurred because we're not monitoring. So if we have the units out there and we're monitoring, once they're out there and you make that investment, they're there all the time. And the nice thing about our units also, and this is all online, I hope people really visit our website at teamworka.org, but the Kilroy units, the information that we're measuring is available online in real time for anyone who wants to see that information. And it's nice if you look at the Indian River Lagoon, you see the Kilroy symbol, you click on it, up comes a map of the lagoon, and you see arrows. And each one of those arrows indicates where there's a Kilroy, and the arrow is actually pointing in the direction of the water flow at that time. So you click on that unit, and you can see all of the measurements that we're taking. And there are a lot of different sensors that you can put on the Kilroys. There's probably about 20 different things we can measure from. Some of them are basic that just give you temperature, water speed, and some other things, salinity. And then other ones have a complete package on them where they can, monitor a whole host of things. And again, we have a list online that people can read, and they can see why we monitor each one of those. It depends on how much information people want, but it's all there on our website.
Are you involved in the concept of putting some kind of an inlet at J.C. Park?
Orca is not, and we haven't been, I don't know that we've been officially asked to look at that as a solution. It's something I'm sure that if anyone wants to discuss it with us, our scientists and our engineers would love to sit down and talk to people about it. But it's not something we're actively involved in right now. I think we have a lot on our plate trying to get the monitoring in place.
I don't know what the status of that is. But
yeah, I don't either.
Longtime residents would remember, this is before my time, that there was an inlet.
I know.
Steve, is your mic on?
You need to speak into
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. There was an inlet there, and there was a lot of exchange of water, and that's part of the problem here because we go all the way from Fort Pierce to Sebastian, which is about 30 miles, without much circulation of water. And it was proposed that they put some kind of a culvert or something in there to bring water in from the ocean.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that. I don't know what the
Yeah,
status
I don't know. I haven't kept up on that. And actually, even though Orca is based in Fort Pierce, we work all over the country, but we work all over the Treasure Coast. But I happen to live in Vero, so I was really kind of curious to see where that was going to go to, and I haven't seen anything else written on it, or haven't seen any coverage of it, so I'm not aware of it.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
No.
Anybody in the public would like to ask a question? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Paul, are you up next?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Drittenbass, today the hat I'm wearing is maybe twofold. One for Rotary Club of Vero Beach Sunrise and another one for CCA, the Coastal Conservation Association. What I'd like to share with you today is what we're doing to preserve and enhance the lagoon. We get approached by a lot of people based on the doom and gloom that we're seeing, and it's justified. But what can we do to help? I get that question all the time, how can I help? About 3.5 years ago, I'm also a charter captain, and as a charter captain, the Moorings Flats, which is about 440 acres of sovereign-owned land, I started noticing excess of a number of prop scars. And I kept asking myself, how can we stop these prop scars? And so I contacted Dr. Grant Gilmore, I contacted the Fish and Wildlife Commission in Tallahassee and talked to Sean Davis. They recommended maybe putting in a pole and troll or a no-motor zone. And after about 3 years of research, determined with the FWC that a informational zone, non-regulatory, was the best bet. Why? Because people don't realize, especially when the water is tannic like it is today, when they're running through that area, they don't realize there's a grass flat in there that's only about a foot and a half deep. And they hit the edge of the flat, and the prop scar goes in about 70 feet, and it stops. Well, why? Because when you ground your boat, it comes to a halt. And that's about how far it takes for most boats to stop when they're going pretty fast hitting that grass flat. This grass flat actually has all 7 of the grass species on it. It's one of the few places in the lagoon that has all 7 species on it. There are only 7 seagrasses in the Indian River Lagoon, and all 7 of them exist at the moorings flats. So with a non-regulatory zone, trying to push that boulder uphill by myself, I was approached by the Rotary Club of Vero Beach. They had a nautical flea market. They were looking for something to as a benefit, a target to identify their local funds, something for the lagoon. And our club combined with theirs, and then I approached the county commission for a public-private partnership. The Indian River County Commission funded $9,300 to match the money that our Rotary clubs have raised. And as of last week, we just received a grant from Rotary District 6930 for an additional $3,000. So we now have $26,700 to place the buoys. The total cost, the last estimate, which was done a couple weeks ago, is about $25,500. These buoys, there's 24 of them that will surround the moorings flats. They stand about 3 feet high. On each buoy, it will say, "Caution Seagrass Area." It doesn't mean that you can't run your motor through this area. It's just an awareness. When you come into the area, you'll see all these buoys surrounding this flat, and it'll say, "Whoa, slow down. There's something going on here. Back off the throttle. Use your push pole or trolling motor, or tilt your motor up if you want to go in as far as you can before you start fishing, but don't ground the big motor." A prop scar takes about 20 years to heal, if it ever heals, depending on if it silts in or not. If the silt's in, the grass won't grow in the silt. So we now have all of our permits as of about 4 months ago, one from the FWC for the non-regulatory informational zone, no letter of no objection from the DEP and a submerged resource permit, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Coast Guard. None of them have any objections. We're ready to purchase the buoys at this time. We're waiting for final approval from our grant from the Rotary Foundation. I couldn't encumber any of the monies until we had that paperwork in hand, and apparently it's in the mail. So as soon as I receive it, we can order the buoys and we can go to work and surround that grass flat with these buoys and make it an awareness for people. Don't run through there. There are already 2 regulatory zones in that area. One is anything east of the Intercoastal Waterway is idle zone, as well as a year-round manatee zone. We couldn't even put a 3rd regulatory permit in there if we wanted to. So informational was the best way to go. As a CCA member, a second facet of this project, in the very middle of this 440 acres, there's also about a 650 to 700 square foot oyster bar. It's an original, an existing oyster bar. It's been there for as long as I can remember. I've been here since 1957, and we're going to enhance that bar. And using what's called an oyster mat, and I brought one. We take a polypropylene mat. It's got UV inhibitors in the mesh. We drill 36 oyster shells that we've collected from different restaurants and different shellfish companies, and we zip tie them with a black UV inhibited zip tie to the mat. Each one of these, we put them side by side, and we weight the corners down with a landscape donut and then zip tie that with a landscape donut. These go into the intertidal zone, which means from high tide to low tide, because the oysters do like to be in and out of the water. It keeps them away from the predatory species like sheep's head when they're young. We'll put these mats down with another DEP permit, which we're applying for, on the oyster bar, and we place these mats in March of next year. Why March? Because in April, the larvae are released by all the oysters. And the larvae will travel in the water column for a few miles, and there's a lot of oysters on all the seawalls in this surrounding area. So this past Monday, we walked the flat with Dr. Vince Uncomio, who's with Florida Oceanographic Society, and Dr. Grant Gilmore. We walked the entire south end of the flat and looking at the oyster location. Dr. Uncomio, who's an expert on oysters, said that's a perfect location for it. And we're going to have another oyster tying party on August 24th at the Riverside Park. We're going to be there with a Save the Indian River Lagoon campaign. We'll be the side where we can do something. You know, one half's going to say this doom and gloom, and well, in our tent we can say this is what you can do to help. You can tie oyster mats. The oyster mats, the purpose of them is each oyster, when that larvae is released in April, and the spat attached to the existing shells, it takes them about a year to a year and a half to grow to the size you buy in a restaurant. They grow very quickly, and each oyster will filter 50 gallons of water a day. They're filter feeders. They cleanse the water column, light penetrates the water deeper, grows more grass, you have more fish. It's kind of a symbiotic relationship. But it's very effective, and they're doing it all over South Florida. St. Lucie's doing a lot of it through their public works. And this will be the first oyster enhancement project for Indian River County, and it'll be the first seagrass preservation initiative for Indian River County. It's called RISA, which stands for Rotary Initiative for Submerged Seagrass Awareness. So if you see the RISA, that's what it means. There's also a sign there. Robin, could you just put that sign up for me, please, just on the easel? Thank you. Part of the permit requirement is we have to post at all 4 of the launch ramps, the one at Oslo Road, the one at Memorial Island Park, at Round Island and Riverside. We have to post this initiative sign, which explains diagrammatically with a map, explains the public-private partnership, the funding, and identifies all 7 of the seagrasses. So that will be posted at each one of the launch ramps as well as part of the permitting, and that's all inclusive in our budget. So by this time next year, we should have all the buoys in place, and we should have all the oysters in place, or the new mats in place. So this is something that's improving and preserving a pretty special part of the world in the Indian River Lagoon. You say, why here? Is this in trouble? I hear a lot of people say, well, what if the grass disappears here? Right here, the grass is thriving. 2 years ago, when I started bringing to the attention that the grasses were gone, and I had Dr. Gilmore ride on my boat to Sebastian Inlet and see all the grass flats that were barren, where the grasses didn't come back. And then within 6 months, we had the National Geographic, which just aired Florida Friendly. It showed the interconnection with the nursery and sharks coming closer to the seashore. Everywhere from Sebastian down to about the Barber Bridge, the grass has disappeared. And once you get to the Barber Bridge and the 17th Street Bridge, the grasses are still there. And as you go all the way down to Stewart, the grasses are healthy, they're thriving. This is one of the areas where the grasses are still thriving due to the flushing action of Fort Pierce Inlet. Fort Pierce Inlet's about 850 feet wide, about 35 feet to 40 feet deep. And the flushing action comes up to the 17th Street Bridge twice a day. Sebastian Inlet, when it flushes, it's 350 feet wide, averages about 13 feet deep, and it comes as far south as Wabazo Causeway, about 3.5 miles. Huge difference in volume, And you mentioned the culvert. I think it's insignificant what the volume, the flushing action that a culvert could bring, and it could compromise some of the biodiversity of the river. The river needs fresh water. It always has had fresh water. It needs fresh water to survive. The problem is right now is what's in that water that's dumping into the river. It's contaminants we don't need. But the river does need a certain volume of fresh water. It cannot go to high salinity because things can't take high salinity. But at 14 parts per thousand to 31 parts per thousand average, that's a good, healthy profile. But when it goes to 44 or higher, if you don't have any freshwater input, it compromises the grasses and the ecosystem. If it stays below 14 parts per thousand, the oysters and shellfish all die, as they just have in St. Lucie and in Martin, where the lagoon, where the Okeechobee's dumping out. All the work that Dr. Oncomio did, all those oysters have died. They'll come back when they release larvae again in the spring, but they shouldn't. We shouldn't have to put up with that much dumping at one time. I think that's the issue that's going to take years and billions of dollars to fix. But I think the initiative is there, the awareness is there. Now it's just up to us, the public, to do our part because we're all guilty. We all have a ditch in our yard. We all have a swale in our yard, something that keeps the water out of our living rooms when that rain hits, that major rainfall. And keep in mind, water at 58th Avenue, in a major storm when the Indian River Farms has the South Relief Canal open, it takes 4 to 6 hours for the water to get from 58th Avenue into that lagoon. So whatever you dumped on your yard on Saturday, if you had 3-inch rainfall overnight, by Sunday afternoon, it's in the lagoon, as Robin pointed out. So we need to all be we're part of the problem, we need to be part of the fix. And as well as ag, as well as government, as well as Big Sugar, and I think that's where we're headed. And I'm really excited that government and the new legislative committee for the lagoon has been put in place, and I think we're going to make some positive strides in the next year. And with Orca's help, and believe me, these scientists need a paycheck too. They just can't keep volunteering. They burn out. So we need that initiative to fund all these scientists and get the people back to St. John's that were let go by the governor 2 years ago. They need to be in place so they can monitor the health of the lagoon. They are the keepers of the lagoon. It's not Orca. It's not FAU Harbor Branch. They're just scientists that are doing their part to make an awareness that, hey, something's wrong. And they're coming forth saying, here's the toxins. Now let's fix it collectively. It may take 15 or 20 years, but it's not too late. And this has happened all over the country, different bays. This is not a new thing just to Florida. These initiatives take a long time to fix, but they can be fixed. And we all need to do our part. So I'm going to leave it at that and get off my soapbox. But RIS is happening, the oyster mats are happening, and that's all good. So God bless the lagoon. Thank you for your time. Any questions, I'd be glad to answer at this time.
Thank you very much. Will those oysters ever be harvested?
No, these are not for harvest. These are strictly for just for cleansing. The reason we use the mats in lieu of the bags, if you're a fisherman, if you throw a lure over a mesh bag and that hook hits that bag, it's gone. Now you have lures and line all over the place. But the mesh, it settles into the silt, and the oysters are proud of the silt, and it works really well as far as the oysters will grow on top of each other and create more profile, which is a normal growth for an oyster bar.
What will be the future?
Hi.
I'm sorry. What will be the future of the Oslo boat ramp?
That's a question. I'm also your fine commissioner for Indian River County. I'll say that. We have a meeting this Friday. It's an open house at River House. The public is welcome. You come and meet all your commissioners from the 12 different counties. Oslo did score in the Waterway Assistance Program. It did score enough points to be funded. However, I think the Army Corps permit is still outstanding, and if the permit is not issued, then we don't fund that project. I really think Oslo Ramp is a great spot for public access to the waterway, for the lagoon. Personally, I don't think it's a good place for motorized vessels. I would love to see that a unmotorized or non-combustion. I need to qualify that because an electric motor is a motor, but non-combustion engines where kayakers, canoers, paddleboarders, waders can access that waterway in a safe area away from large motorized vessels. And I'll tell this story again. As a captain at Round Island, I'm waiting for one of my charters, and they have a large contingent of kayakers that come to that area as an outfitter. They launch there all the time. I'm at the dock, my motor's running, 150 horsepower motor, and a young boy in a kayak, and they're not real stable if you've ever been one for your first time. They're very unstable. He flips over and he's hugging my motor while it's idling. They should never happen. Of course, I killed the motor and helped the kid out of a precarious situation, but they need their own place. And a lot of the Waterway Assistance Program grants, and there were 79 this year, a great number of them were for new launch ramps for unmotorized vessels, such as kayaks and paddleboards. And they don't need to compete with the motorized vessels. They should have their own places. Oslo is a great location for that. It can really provide public access in a very environmentally sensitive area. And these unmotorized vessels are perfect for that because they are environmentally sensitive. There's no motors. There's no pollution. They're not causing turbidity. I really want to work with the Indian River County Commission and the Indian River County Engineering Department, if it doesn't get funded this year, which would be the fourth year it didn't get funded, to make it happen and make this a common sense approach. Clean up the debris that's out there. Forget about dredging. Remove some of the muck in the first 230 feet. Do sand shooting and cover it with sand. Let the grasses come in place, and call it a unmotorized vessel ramp or non-combustion engine launch ramp. Stabilize the parking as they're proposing. Instead of paving the 2,100 feet of asphalt, use a geotextile mat like we put up in the National Park and Jungle Trail and Pelican Island. And that helps slow down the runoff from the road. Capture the runoff that they're proposing in their engineering, which is very good to clean up the DOT runoff before that gets into the lagoon. A lot of good things were done in their engineering proposal. It's just that there's a lot of resistance from the environmental side of things because I think it's just not the right fit for motorized vessels. So there's a great future for Oslo.
Was dredging a part of that project?
Well, dredging is a bad word. Okay, let's just say they were removing some of the muck, and it's only for 230 feet. If you've ever walked through there, the muck is almost hip deep in the middle. It's very deep. But you can remove some of that muck and cover it with sand, and then that sand doesn't cause turbidity. And then the grasses will grow in the sand. We call it encapsulating. It's being done all over South Florida and Palm Beach especially, where they have a muck line and they want to mitigate and plant new seagrasses. Rather than removing that muck, which causes a lot of turbidity, they'll cover it with sand, like beach sand, and the grasses can be supported in that. It's a good idea. And I'd love to see that happen in the Oslo area. But there are other neat places where there's other great ideas we have as far as future launch ramps on the on the mainland side versus the Barrier Island side. We have two other really great sites that we have in mind. I'd love to propose those with one of the planning grants from FIND. That's up to $50,000, which doesn't even require matching funds, where the county or the city in a joint partnership or interlocal agreement can create some really neat mainland launch ramps as the need comes about. As we increase in population, there's a ratio of how many launch sites you need. But we'll get there. We're going to need some more. But let's use a common sense approach to where they are and grants. The grants can be phased through FIND. They can make an application for design. We can fund that up to 50% matching. And then in this phase 2, when they're doing construction, whether it's 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, they can keep applying for the WA Waterway Assistance Program grants, and we can fund them over a few years, if need be, to complete some of these projects. And that's very common using FIND WAP's assistance program. So, hope that's informative.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
I have something. You said that you were talking about the Sebastian Inlet and the flush, and it makes it down to the Wabasso Bridge. What do you suggest between Wabasso and Barber Street? I mean, how can we improve that
I don't think we need to do anything other than just remove the contaminants they're dumping into the river. The fresh water for centuries is dumped into the river and the lagoon, and it's healthy for the lagoon. The oysters need that lower salinity.
Okay.
The higher salinity, the oysters die. So we just need to remove the contaminants that we're all dumping into the lagoon. And like Orca's doing, monitor and map the whole lagoon to see where they're coming in, find out the causes, and then figure out the cure. But you got to know the cause first, and we have to know what they are. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns. They're found toxins they can't identify yet, or how they got there. They can identify them, but they don't know how they got there. They don't know what their effect is in long term sitting in the bottom of the river, in the lagoon. They change over time. And nature can dissolve some of those toxins, but some of them they can't. Heavy metals won't go away. But what is the cause of the loss of seagrass in Indian River County is the puzzle, because you can't blame it on an algae bloom. We didn't have an algae bloom in Indian River County and Sebastian. Water's been crystal clear for years. Northern part of the lagoon, Mosquito Lagoon, Banana River, they've had a tremendous brown and green algae bloom. In fact, I flew in from the Bahamas a week ago and flew over Dragon Head at Melbourne Causeway, and you can see the whole Banana River is full of the brown algae again, huge sweeps of it, swirls of it. That's what needs to stop up there, because that's blocking the sunlight and killing the grass. As Robin pointed out, that 156 miles, everybody has their own problems, and they're all different, they're all unique. Until you identify what those problems are, you don't know how to fix it. It's not one fix. It's going to be many fixes collectively across this whole lagoon. They're not all the same problem, and that needs to be understood. That's very critical to figuring out the cause, and then we can figure out the cure. So that's what Orca is trying to do, and let's bring back the scientists and pay them well, because this is the only way it's going to be fixed. These experts, we listen to our experts. I'm just a fisherman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, let's move on to the agenda. Where are we? Citizens input. Do we have anyone who would like to speak? New business. We've done that. Oh, yeah, that's coming up next. The thing about the brown water discharge, when I saw this, I thought, why would we even get involved in it? Because there are federal regulations, Coast Guard, various other things. I don't know. So let's discuss this. Tim, you want to have some input on this?
Tim Grabenbauer, Marina Director. Actually, I can tell you what we currently do now. Obviously, we have boats and wet slips there, and we also have boats on a mooring field, a state permitted mooring field. We have 2 fixed pump out stations that are located on the fuel dock, and we also have a pump out boat that we run twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, out to anybody that has signed up for it on. We actually have a sign up book in our office, and we'll also go to any boat that's at a dock that requests to be pumped out. So, and we pump a fair amount. And I do send a report to the state every quarter for the pump out boat. That's one of the requirements of the grant that we received for that equipment. But right now I'm not recording what we're doing at the dock. We had a meeting at about 2 days ago, the request of Commissioner Peter O'Brien, because he was concerned about the lagoon too. And he requested that we take a look at those numbers that we're doing at the dock, and we're going to monitor that starting probably in November, take a sample, and take a look at what percentage of the boats that are coming in and out are actually pumping out. I mean, we get a lot of people that will come in for a day. They'll come to the dock and get fuel, water, and pump out before they leave. So that's kind of that's the usual trend, but we're going to try to get a better handle on if we're close to 100% compliance. So we'll sample that in November.
Maybe the issue is what authority does the city have to enforce these things? And I don't know what it is.
Well, we don't have. I mean, obviously, I don't have any law enforcement authority. If we could. A couple of steps we could take, if you so desire, or recommend, is we could. There's dye tablets. We could have people put dye tablets in their holding tanks. It's the tablets are fairly expensive, but I suppose we could charge it off to the customer, and that way, if they pump overboard, you actually have a dye mark that you know somebody's done it. Another thing that you could do is we could apply to EPA at the federal level and request to have the entire area designated a federal no discharge zone. But
isn't it already?
No.
I didn't know that.
No.
I mean, what navigator within the continental United States is not a no discharge?
Well, there are certain you have to actually request it. I mean, there are obviously certain things that you can't discharge into the waterway, like oil or
we're talking about
brown water
discharge, yeah. Not gray water discharge, but brown water.
No, gray water discharge you're allowed. So, but no, there's certain.
Well, if we did that,
you can't pump your holding tank in the lagoon.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah, you're.
If we got that designation, then what would the city have to enforce it?
Well, actually, if we got that designation, then it would probably be federal, state, and city could do it.
That's what I'm thinking.
But the placards that are already on, I assume on sailboats as well, but certainly on all power boats, says no discharging.
Right,
of
and it's
waste
required
inside
to
of
be
the 30
there.
miles.
And if you have an overboard, if you have a holding tank and you have obviously an overboard valve,
Doesn't
that
cover-
has to be locked.
Doesn't that placard itself, isn't that the regulation?
It is.
Doesn't that say that?
Yeah, if you have I think it's a
nobody's
Type 3
enforcing
MSD.
You're talking about the little thing that you put
Yeah.
up in the head on the bulkhead.
Right.
Yeah. Nobody's enforcing
There's a plaque there, and the overboard discharge valve has to be either locked with a lock or a wire tie or something that would be difficult to remove to actually open that valve. So that's the current law.
What do we need to do about this? Are you familiar with what other cities might have done?
No, but I can.
Maybe
All of us that have a mooring field are required to have a pump out boat, and we're all required to have a management plan for the pump out boat, and we all pretty much have the similar plans because the plan had to be approved by the state, by DEP.
Well, yeah, but once again, I think the issue here is enforcement. Otherwise, most people are going to cooperate and not pump out
Right.
to the lagoon. I don't really know how to go forward with this. maybe the designation that you mentioned before about no discharge, what is that called?
It would be a federal no discharge
Is that
zone.
a big deal?
I just have to apply to EPA in Washington.
Is that something we should do? I just don't know how to address this.
I guess that's kind of up to you guys. You have to meet a certain criteria. I mean, EPA doesn't just give it to everyone. I've looked at it before, and I think we do meet the criteria. But I mean, there are areas like Nantucket Island is a federal no discharge zone. All of the Bay and Rhode Island, the entire area is a federal no discharge zone. So,
just seems a bit redundant to me to have to apply to be a federal no discharge zone.
I thought all navigable waters within the United States were no discharge zones.
No.
That was the law of the land. Dick, do you have a comment?
Well, this started actually at a club, a morning meeting, and there were three guys there who have boats in the marina, and they were of the opinion there's a fair amount of gray water discharge, and the names were listed in the original work that I submitted to Tim, so you could reference them. When Commissioner O'Brien was by talking to us, Tim and myself and the city manager, the goal that he would like to see is 100% compliance within the county. Not just at our marina, but there are actually two other possibilities that I know of. I think we had Dick is sitting in the back with the recreation, and they're working on another project, which I won't comment on. But they've done something interesting. They've broken their commission down, and they've done some work in trying to understand this particular recreational and beach use project. We do know that many states, Rhode Island and Maryland as examples, are much stricter than Florida, and we do know that many communities are much stricter than Vero Beach, and that they have, according to these guys, I'm no expert. I don't know. All I know is what they told me one morning in 30 minutes that upset Peter and myself. But there are communities that have charges when you anchor there. There are communities that do a good job of monitoring. Virginia's another state. So, I would suggest that it's a research project, Steve. In other words, to find out whether it's Tim or you or your commission, but to find out, I think it's likened to what was talked about over here. We don't really know how big a problem it is. So part of what Peter wanted done as soon as possible was to monitor also the boats that are coming into the docks, so we have a fairly decent idea of what's happening. We really don't. If you believe the three guys I referenced, there is a significant percentage of older boats and so on that there could be problems with, but we don't know that to be true. We may find out from your work with the Kilroy, what we are dealing with if there's one in the area. But then, of course, that could be entangled in the nitrogen problem because that's also an area of septic tanks. So who knows, But I think it's a question of finding out what others areas are doing. You have ties up in Maryland, I know, and trying to understand what we have and spending some time on it. You could charge, a boat comes in, you could charge an additional $5 so that it's a known that they're expected to pump out. You could do more with signage. You could do quite a bit more one way or another, and there are communities that actually do that. Whether it's a good idea or bad idea, I don't submit to you. I just submit to you that we'd like to have 100% compliance. And whether we're getting it, we don't know. And what others do, we really don't know. I would submit that those three names which were on the original paperwork would be good people to talk to. I wish I had more to offer you.
No, that's
Steve.
fine. We'll follow up.
And you know, I don't know what we're looking at, but it was alarming enough that both Commissioner O'Brien and myself were upset about it, because these three guys that have boats monitored, anchored there from time to time, say there is an abuse. Now, I don't know.
The only thing that I heard in this discussion was what you said about the tablets that you put in, the dye tablets. Could we require that?
Yeah, I don't see why we couldn't.
They'd pass them out free or what? I mean, I don't know. What's the way to do this? If somebody comes in and rents a mooring, would we require him to put the tablet in?
Yeah, there are facilities that do that.
And how do you monitor that?
You look for dye in the water.
How long does it stay in the water?
I don't know. I don't know.
That I don't know.
You know, somebody, they've got the tablet.
That's why I need to talk to somebody else who
I
does
have
it.
to go
Yeah.
out in a motorboat and look
Yeah.
around every 2 or 3 times a day or something like that. But, you know, that would be a deterrent. I'm sure that if you required them to do that they would, if anybody's doing it, and I'm not so sure that they are.
Well, like I say, we do a large number of pump outs. I don't monitor them at the dock right now, but we do several pump outs every day
Are they
at
free?
the dock.
They are free.
They are free.
Yeah, so
we
that's
are
an incentive.
allowed to charge up to $5, and we do not.
What's the $5? Who charges $5?
No, I said we are allowed to charge up to
Oh, I see.
$5. There's a cap of $5 on that because of the grant money that we took.
Yeah.
But we don't charge anything.
But once again, it's an incentive for people to comply. If you provide it for free, why not? And we have the boat with the pump in it.
Right.
And cruisers look for those spots where they can get a pump out.
I get people that will get fairly nervous in the morning. You guys are coming out today, aren't you?
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Do they still have macerators? Mm-hmm. And if you have one of those, you don't have a tank, right? You don't have a holding
No, you
tank.
still have a holding tank.
You
It
do?
has to run
Right.
by federal reg, run through a holding tank, and then the macerator discharges from there.
It's funny, when this all came about in the 70s, I was living on a boat. And it said, if you have a head, you must have a holding tank. So I took the head out of the boat. I wasn't living on it then. I mean, we had moved here. But this was a cruising boat. And a lot of people have done that. Some people have composting devices, but most people have holding tanks.
Well, the thing that works best in our favor is we have nice, cool, air-conditioned restrooms. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, should I suggest this? Find out what some of our neighboring cities are doing. Look into the tablet thing. That seems to be the best idea from my point of view.
Yeah, what I can do is I'll contact the people that have active mooring fields right now, and I can also we're a member of a municipal marina association in the state of Florida. There's 18 marinas, or 18 cities, so I can contact them.
And once again, I've been around a long time. I thought that it was illegal to dump brown water anywhere in the United States. Gray water, I don't know about.
Yeah.
Wash water, soap, and so forth. So I'm confused on
No,
that point.
brown water it is illegal, but gray water you can dump in.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, this federal no discharge zone that we're talking about, you're not allowed to dump anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they
Well, would
wash
you-
dishes in a head compartment and it runs through a haul drain. That would be illegal if
Correct.
they were on a mooring.
Correct.
Okay, would you look into those things, and at our next meeting we'll go into it.
Okay.
Is that
Tim, you
acceptable?
said the pump outs are free.
Yes.
Right? Does that include the boat pump out too?
Yeah.
Yep.
And there is a grant that covers some of that expense, right?
Yeah, it's the Clean Vessel Act grant, and
Was that a one-time thing or ongoing?
no, it's ongoing.
Good. All right.
And they matched 75% for the equipment.
Okay, any more on this subject? Directors' matters. Do you have any matters?
I'm just going to update you on we talked about the renting the apartment that's
Oh, yeah.
being painted and stuff right now, and city attorney's office and planning and Mr. Malfay, who's our lease guy. They're working on that end of it, the paperwork. And we'd also talked about beer and wine package sales. And at this time, we have I had to get a separate resale tax certificate for that because we would be the only department in the city doing that. And the application is with alcohol and tobacco, and we're just about ready to wrap that up. And my target date right now is September 1st.
I'm glad you brought that up. A bunch of things occurred to me about that apartment. Can that be rented by the week, by the month, by the season?
And that's what we're working on right now to see what we can do and what's the best
Well, I think
for us.
There's a potential for pretty good income from that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I can think of a lot of vacationers that come here from Orlando and trailer their boats down here. So.
Oh, there ought to be a lot of demand
yeah,
for this. And then we had to figure out how we're going to advertise it.
Right.
How far away are we from making it available?
I can't give you an answer on that yet. I'm not sure when it's going to be done yet.
Okay,
so
okay.
yeah.
Good. I don't have anything further to say. Do any members have any matters they'd like to bring up?
I'm good.
And I also have some new business cards I want to give to everybody. So.
I'm sorry, what?
New business cards, new design.
I do have a question in regards to the apartment. How are you going to market that? What's your plan to push that forward?
That's an unknown at this time too. So
Put it in the cruising guide.
Usually, what we do is we'll have it appraised, and then we'll advertise it. Like when I did the building that Mr. Waddell is in, that was advertised in the paper. We can do something through the purchasing office. I know the airport, I think, recently used a realtor, and that's how Dragonfly Boats was moved over to the airport property.
There are a whole bunch of websites that advertise such things. But I think it has a lot of potential.
Yeah, me too. But I'm trying to get up to speed on this. I've never done this part of the operation before, so.
Save a boat slip.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that should go with it. Okay, anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, aye. Thank you very much. Thank you, our guests, for your presentations. That was great.